Don't microwave the salmon again. It smells like the carpet at work. That was the text that lit the fuse. She sent it from upstairs while I stood 3 feet from the stove, holding a plate. It wasn't the message itself. It was the fact she didn't say it out loud, just sat in bed, texting me like I was her Airbnb host, and she was rating my kitchen etiquette. I stared at the screen, then looked up at the ceiling like I expected her to laugh and yell, "Just kidding." Nothing. I hit "okay" and slid the plate into the sink. That was Wednesday, 2 days before she vanished for the retreat and forgot to lie well. She left in a rush Friday morning, hair still wet, grabbing a tote bag she never used, mumbling something about team building. I asked if she wanted me to drive her, and she paused long enough to say, "That'd be awkward." Then she was gone. I didn't ask what awkward meant. I never do. I just nodded like a human paper towel and let her walk out the door smelling like somebody else's cologne. It wasn't mine. I hadn't worn cologne in years. Trina once told me it made her feel stuffy, so I stopped. I even threw mine out. She came back Sunday night looking freshly exfoliated and underwhelmed. The moment she stepped inside, she dumped her bags, opened the fridge, and said, "Didn't you go grocery shopping?" No kiss. No, I missed you. Not even a fake smile. I stared at her while she dug through the shelves, the same way someone scans a vending machine that just ate their last dollar. Then, for some reason I still don't understand, I asked, "Was Caleb there?" She didn't flinch, didn't blink. She closed the fridge, turned around, and said, "Yeah, you finally figured that out?" She said it like I'd won a prize. Then she walked past me and added, "You never ask questions. I figured you wouldn't care." That was the first time I felt genuinely embarrassed to exist. Not sad, not angry, just ridiculous. Like I'd spent the last 2 years pouring water into a glass that had a hole in the bottom. And I never noticed because I was too proud of how well I was pouring. But I didn't yell. I didn't pack my bags. I didn't even tell her to leave. You know what I did? I picked her up the next morning. She asked for a ride to work. She got in my car like nothing happened, scrolling her phone while I clutched the steering wheel like a man driving himself into a burning building. She even said, "Don't forget I have dinner with the team tonight." I nodded. Of course she did. She slammed the door behind her and walked toward the building, not once turning around. I sat in the parking lot for 5 more minutes, watching her disappear, while that same text from 3 days ago about the salmon still blinked unread on my cracked phone. That's when I knew. This wasn't just about betrayal. It was about being erased, one quiet moment at a time. That Monday night, while she was having dinner with the team, I sat alone at our kitchen table staring at 2 plates I'd reheated for no reason. One of them was hers, salmon again, of course. She never even said she wasn't coming home for dinner, just left the vague team thing hanging like a threat. I guess I still believed, somehow, that she might walk through the door and say, "I changed my mind. Let's eat." Instead, I got a text at 8:46 p.m. that said, "Don't wait up." 3 words. Nothing else. No emoji. No warmth. Not even punctuation. I left the food on the counter like a fool and paced the house until I wore a line into the rug. The cats stared at me like they sensed something was off, maybe because the guy who normally fed them was now mumbling to himself and checking the window every 4 minutes like he expected a ghost to show up. But I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I cleaned. I vacuumed a carpet that wasn't dirty. I reorganized our Tupperware cabinet even though we only used the same 2 containers over and over. I folded laundry that wasn't mine just to keep my hands busy. And still, my mind kept circling back to the fact that she had looked me in the eye and admitted to sleeping with someone else, not just admitted, but practically declared it, and then expected me to play chauffeur like nothing happened. Around 10:15, I opened her laptop. I know, privacy. Boundaries. But come on. After that confession? After that kind of detachment? I wasn't digging for revenge. I was digging for clarity. I just needed to understand what I was competing with. And what I found wasn't some steamy affair log. It was worse. They were messaging on a shared document, disguised as a project file labeled Q3 Revenue Brainstorm. It was genius, honestly. If I hadn't opened the file, I'd have never guessed. The conversation wasn't even romantic. That's what stunned me. It was mostly mockery. About me. There were lines like, "He literally picked me up this morning. Still doesn't get it. You said he was passive, but damn. It's like dating a doormat with a driver's license." And the one that still rattles inside my head like a marble in a jar. I wanted him to find out. I think I needed him to. I don't want to cheat. I want out. I didn't even get angry at that point. I just felt numb. She hadn't fallen in love with someone else. She hadn't been swept off her feet. She just wanted to hurt me, to test whether I'd finally break if she pushed hard enough. At midnight, I heard her come home. I closed the laptop and sat on the edge of the couch, trying to slow my breathing. She came in smelling like expensive soap and something that wasn't perfume, something masculine, maybe cologne or aftershave. She didn't even look surprised to see me awake. "You're still up?" she asked casually, as if this were just another Monday. I nodded and asked, "How was dinner?" She shrugged. "Fine. Boring. Caleb won't shut up about golf." Then she poured herself a glass of water, glanced at the untouched salmon on the counter, and said, "You made fish again?" I said nothing. She took a sip and walked off to the bedroom. And I sat there, in the same chair I'd been in for hours, realizing something terrifying: she wasn't planning to end things. Not yet. Not until I did. She wanted to force me to be the one who snapped, the one who packed a bag or filed papers or slammed a door. She wanted to be the victim. And the longer I stayed silent, the more power she had to rewrite the story. That's when I understood this wasn't just about infidelity. This was a performance. And I was her favorite prop. But I wasn't ready to exit stage left. Not yet. I woke up to the sound of her blow dryer. It was 6:18 a.m., and the hallway light bled through our cracked bedroom door like a spotlight on everything I no longer belonged to. The smell of her hair product drifted into the living room, where I'd been sleeping for weeks now, on the pull-out couch that dipped in the middle like it had given up too. She hadn't asked why I stopped sleeping beside her. She didn't ask why I stopped folding her laundry either. Or why I no longer turned on the heater in the mornings so the bathroom would be warm by the time she got in. Those things used to matter to her. But lately, she moved through the house like I was just part of the furniture. Something to navigate around. Not important enough to acknowledge, but too familiar to replace. I listened to her footsteps, the way she paused by the mirror, then walked back to the bedroom, then again to the kitchen. She wasn't late. She wasn't rushed. She was just getting ready for her day. Meanwhile, I laid there like a guest overstaying his welcome. When she finally walked into the living room, she startled a bit. "Oh," she said, "I didn't realize you were still here." That line. That god-awful line. Still here. I almost laughed. But I just sat up, rubbed my eyes, and mumbled, "You want me to take you again?" She blinked, like she was deciding whether it was worth answering. "Sure. If it's not a hassle." Not a hassle. That's what I'd become. A fallback ride. A button she pushed when her coworker boyfriend didn't feel like playing Uber. We didn't speak the entire drive. She scrolled her phone, smiled once, not at me, of course, and then asked, out of nowhere, "Can we not talk about anything today?" I wanted to scream. To yell, "Talk about what, Trina? About how you sleep with Caleb and come home to the guy who still buys your favorite almond milk." But instead, I nodded. I kept my hands at 10 and 2, and I said, "Sure." At a red light, I saw our reflection in the rearview mirror. We didn't look like a couple. We didn't even look like acquaintances. I was the silent chauffeur with thinning hair and bags under my eyes. She was the woman beside him, polished, confident, unreadable. When I dropped her off, she kissed me on the cheek again. Same spot. Same quick press of her lips, like someone stamping a loyalty card at a coffee shop. "I'll text if I need a ride later," she said, then vanished through the revolving doors of her building. I didn't drive home right away. I circled the block 5 times, trying to decide if I should do something reckless, drive to Caleb's place, smash his car, scream at his window. But I didn't know where he lived. I didn't even know his last name. Instead, I parked in front of a bookstore I used to take her to on Saturdays. We'd spend hours there. She liked the cookbooks and those oversized lifestyle magazines. I liked the silence, the smell of pages. Back then, she used to touch my arm every time she found something she thought I'd like. "Look, Emery," she'd say, smiling with her whole face. "This is so you." Now, she barely made eye contact. I sat in my car outside that same bookstore and stared at the window displays, cheerful, bright, completely unaware of the kind of decay a relationship could suffer in plain sight. I remember wondering if anyone else walking by could tell just by looking at me that I was the guy whose wife had slept with someone else on purpose, just to watch what I'd do. But I hadn't done anything. And maybe that's why she kept pushing. When I finally got home, I walked into the kitchen and saw the post-it she left on the fridge, not for me, for herself. "Pick up wine. Cat litter." That's when I realized something even darker than her cheating. She wasn't ashamed. She wasn't hiding it anymore. She was testing me, seeing how far she could go before I'd finally fold. And the terrifying part? I wasn't sure I ever would. I never cared much for birthdays, especially not my own. I don't like parties. I never know how to react to gifts, and I feel weird when people sing to me. But this year, for the first time in a long time, I was quietly looking forward to it. Not because I wanted anything. I didn't even plan on mentioning it, but because I thought maybe she'd remember on her own. That she'd look at the date and pause. That something human in her would blink back into place and she'd say, "Wait, today's the day, isn't it?" But she didn't. She didn't say a word. The morning started like any other. I drove her to work in silence while she replied to messages with that half smile she reserves for people she actually likes. At one point, she chuckled. I turned my head slightly, just enough to see if she'd share whatever was funny. She didn't. She just said, "It's nothing," and kept typing. At her office, she stepped out of the car without looking back. No kiss this time. No, thanks. Not even a sarcastic, "Don't wait up." Just the sound of her heels vanishing into the hum of the building. I sat in the parking lot for almost 20 minutes after that. Not crying, not thinking, just sitting, like a lawn ornament that someone forgot to bring inside for the winter. Eventually, I drove home, made a bowl of cereal, and opened my laptop. One birthday email from my dentist. Not even a text from my sister. It was like I'd slipped into some alternate version of my life where I never existed in the first place. Around 3 p.m., I checked Trina's shared calendar out of habit. That's when I saw it, Caleb's B-Day drinks, 6:30, Harbor Lounge. Written in her handwriting. Color-coded. Starred. She remembered his birthday, but not mine. I stared at the screen, and for a second, I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the absurdity of it all finally landed. She was cheating on me with a man she celebrated, while I sat alone in a house we bought together, eating cereal and Googling what time PetSmart closed. At 6:15, she breezed through the front door. She was dressed up way more than usual. Her hair curled just enough to look effortless, that red lipstick I hadn't seen in over a year, and heels I didn't even recognize. When I asked, "Are you going out?" she didn't even stop moving. "Work drinks," she called over her shoulder, grabbing her purse. "Oh, and I left the cat some wet food in case you forgot." She hadn't forgotten my birthday. She'd chosen to ignore it. I followed her to the door without even realizing it. My voice came out before I could stop myself. "Trina, it's my birthday." She froze, hand on the knob. There was this strange silence, like the room itself inhaled. She turned slowly, looking at me like I just reminded her to take out the recycling. "Wait, is it?" she asked. "I thought it was next week." I shook my head. "It's today. It's been today all day." She blinked. Then, and I swear this happened, she looked at her watch. "Well, I've got a thing. Can we maybe do something this weekend?" No apology. No guilt. Just a scheduling adjustment. I didn't respond. I stepped back and let her leave. But I didn't stay home. Something in me snapped, not in an explosive way, but in that quiet, final way when a door creaks shut and you know it's never opening again. I grabbed my coat and keys and started driving. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't sit in that house another second pretending it was still a home. At some point, I found myself parked outside the Harbor Lounge. I wasn't stalking. I wasn't planning anything. I just needed to see it for myself, how far gone she really was. I stayed in the car, hidden by a line of bushes and 2 parked SUVs. I saw her through the tall front windows. She laughed. She flipped her hair. She reached across the table and touched his wrist. And then she gave him the same smile she used to give me, the one that made me fall in love with her years ago in a grocery store checkout line, when she teased me for buying canned soup on sale. I watched her lean in and whisper something in his ear. He laughed. She laughed louder. And that was it. She remembered everything about him. And nothing about me. I don't know how long I sat there after she smiled at him like that. Long enough for my legs to go numb. Long enough for the condensation on the windshield to blur her outline until I could barely tell if I was looking at a woman or just the shadow of someone I used to know. I should have driven away. Should have gone home and locked the door and shut the world out like I usually do. But something inside me, not rage, not even sadness, something emptier than both held me in place. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just stared, trying to find the version of her that used to trace circles on my hand when we watched movies. That woman was gone. Or maybe she was never real, and I'd imagined her all along. Eventually, the door to the lounge opened and she came out, her heels clicking against the pavement, arm hooked through as like they'd done it 1,000 times before. She looked up at him, said something, and laughed so loud it echoed off the brick. That sound, Her laugh used to be mine. Now it made me feel physically ill. I ducked down in the car, ridiculous I know, but I panicked. She walked him to his car, not mine, not our beat-up Honda Civic with the coffee stains and broken AUX cord, but his shiny black SUV. He opened the door for her, and she slid in like it was the most natural thing in the world. No hesitation. No shame. I waited until the taillights vanished into the night before I sat back up. My fingers were shaking as I gripped the wheel, not out of anger, but that hollow, unstable kind of trembling that happens when your brain hasn't caught up to your reality yet. I drove home in silence. Didn't even turn the radio on. I pulled into the driveway just past midnight and parked in the dark. I didn't bother going inside right away. I just sat there with the engine off and the windows rolled down, listening to the night breathe. When I finally opened the car door to leave, I noticed something strange on the passenger seat. It was her scarf, the one she wore earlier, pale gray with little embroidered stars. She must have tossed it there when I drove her that morning and forgot to take it. I picked it up and brought it to my face out of some dumb reflex I can't explain. It still smelled like her perfume. I hated how much comfort that smell used to give me. I walked into the house with the scarf still in my hand and tossed it onto the couch. Then I sat down beside it, staring at the floor, waiting for the weight in my chest to either crush me or lift. But something else caught my eye. Her work bag. She'd left it by the door. Normally, she never did. Trina was obsessive about keeping her bag in the closet, zipped, tucked away. But this time, it sat there half open like it had something to say. I know I shouldn't have. But at that point, I wasn't interested in doing the right thing. The right thing had gotten me exactly nowhere. Inside the bag was her laptop, her wallet, a few receipts, and a folded paper that didn't belong. My name was on the outside, in her handwriting. It wasn't a note. It wasn't even addressed to me directly. It was a printed itinerary. A hotel reservation. For two. Booked under her name, 2 weeks from now. Ocean view. King suite. Romantic add-ons included. I flipped the page over. Guest name, Caleb. So that was the plan. Not just drinks. Not just team bonding. This had been unfolding for longer than I realized. They weren't sneaking around anymore. They were planning weekends. Trips. Moments I'd never even get the chance to pretend were mine. My heart didn't drop. It didn't shatter. It just paused, as if it finally realized it was beating for the wrong person. I set the paper down gently, like it was made of glass. I walked to the kitchen, stood at the counter, looked around at the walls I painted, the clock I hung, the wedding photo she used to say was her favorite. Then I opened the fridge, grabbed the cake I'd bought for myself that morning, the one she never noticed, and I sat down at the table. I ate it, alone, with my fingers, and for the first time in weeks, I actually tasted something. I didn't bring up the hotel reservation the next day. I didn't bring up the fact that I knew she was planning a weekend escape with him, a perfectly curated lie wrapped in expensive linens and ocean view windows. I didn't even mention the scarf or the missed birthday or the paper with Caleb's name in bold, black ink. I said nothing. Instead, I did something that felt more powerful than yelling. I played along. When she came downstairs wearing that soft gray sweater, the one I bought her last Christmas that she said made her feel neutral, not warm, not cold, I asked if she wanted coffee. She blinked like I'd short-circuited. "You're up early," she said, carefully, like she was testing the ground before stepping. "Couldn't sleep," I answered with a smile. "Figured I'd make breakfast." She eyed the counter, the eggs, the toast. Then me. "Thanks, but I'll grab something at work." Of course she would. Probably from the coffee shop near Caleb's office, the one she told me was too expensive for regular mornings. Guess it wasn't anymore. Still, I smiled. "Suit yourself." And I watched her grab her bag, slinging it over her shoulder like she hadn't left it behind just 12 hours ago with evidence of everything she was hiding, or rather, not hiding anymore. It was wild, the way she walked around with the confidence of someone who believed I was too weak, too spineless, too exhausted to ever fight back. She was right. Kind of. I didn't fight. But I was paying attention now. I drove her to work again. This time, I played music, her favorite playlist from years ago. Songs from road trips, our old apartment, grocery runs that used to end with her humming as she unpacked paper bags. At first, she didn't react. But then track 4 came on. That one. She looked out the window, jaw tight. "You still have this playlist?" she asked. "Of course," I said, as calmly as I could. "You made it." She shifted uncomfortably, then stared at her phone like she was searching for a reason to leave the moment. But I caught it, the flicker of something human in her face. Not guilt, exactly. But a pulse of memory, maybe. Something she didn't expect to feel. Listen, she said finally. I won't need a ride tomorrow. Caleb's picking me up. There it was. Direct. Cold. Like a final swipe of a blade she assumed I wouldn't feel. I nodded. No problem. That caught her off guard more than I expected. You're okay with that? She asked, one brow slightly raised. I laughed lightly, kept my eyes on the road. Trina, you're not exactly being subtle anymore. I figured we were past pretending. She was quiet for the rest of the drive. When we pulled up in front of her building, she didn't move right away. Just sat there like she was waiting for me to say something dramatic or tearful or broken. But I didn't. I looked straight ahead and waited. Okay, well, have a good one, she muttered. You too, I replied. Enjoy lunch with him. And hey, don't forget your scarf again. She turned to look at me, face frozen. I smiled and reached back, gently placing the scarf in her lap. Her fingers clutched it too fast. A giveaway. She got out of the car and walked inside without another word. That night, she didn't come home. She didn't text. She didn't call. I stayed up, but not for her. I was looking through old photos, ones I hadn't seen in years. Us at a pumpkin patch. Her holding a kitten we almost adopted. Me holding a paintbrush in the living room before we moved in. Smiling. Happy. Real. And in every one of those photos, I looked like a man who was willing to do anything to keep her smiling. Now, I looked like a man who had finally stopped trying. Around 2 a.m., I got a single message. Staying at Jenny's. Don't wait up. Another lie. Jenny moved to Chicago last fall. I helped her pack the U-Haul. I didn't reply. I just closed the laptop, turned off the lights, and lay down on the couch, not because I was banished, but because for once, I chose the silence. For the first time since this whole thing began, I wasn't shrinking. I was watching. And I was done pretending not to know. The next morning, I didn't get out of bed early. I didn't make coffee. I didn't check my phone every few minutes waiting for a text that never came. I let the house stay quiet. No dishes. No noise. Just the soft hum of the fridge and the ticking clock above the stove that had been running 5 minutes slow for 3 years. I always meant to fix it. Funny how easy it is to ignore things that don't scream for attention. I had no clue when she came home. At some point before sunrise, maybe. I heard the door click, heard her heels shuffle lightly across the floor, but I didn't get up. I didn't go check on her. Let her disappear into the bedroom like a ghost in a trench coat. By the time I got up and walked into the kitchen, she was already gone again. I found a note on the counter, a post-it with the words, "Working late again. Don't wait," scrawled in her quick, careless handwriting. There was no greeting, no name, not even punctuation. Just a statement, as if she was telling a stranger where to leave a package. She didn't mention Caleb, but she didn't have to. I tossed the note in the trash and stood there for a long time, gripping the counter's edge like it could steady me. Around 11 a.m., something strange happened. I got a call. It was from a number I didn't recognize, local area code, no name. I normally let unknown numbers go to voicemail, but this time, I answered. I don't know why. Hey, is this Emery? A woman's voice asked, hesitant. Yeah, who's this? This is Danielle. I work with Trina. I'm in the same department. My stomach immediately turned. Okay. She paused. I'm not trying to cause problems. I thought you should know something. I saw something yesterday. I shouldn't even be saying anything, but it just felt wrong. I leaned against the wall, heart climbing up my throat. What did you see? Trina and Caleb. In the conference room. After hours. The lights were off, but the blinds weren't all the way closed. I was grabbing my bag from the cubicle and I saw them. I said nothing. Just listened to the thump of my pulse in my ears. They weren't being discreet, Emery. They weren't trying to hide. It was obvious. And this morning, she told a few of the girls she was going to make sure you finally snapped. Her exact words. He's pathetic. I'm going to keep pushing until he finally cracks. I want him to be the one who ends it. I closed my eyes. Anyway, she continued, her voice softer now. I just thought you should hear it from someone who isn't pretending not to see it. I'm sorry. I won't call again. She hung up. I stood there with the phone in my hand, screen black, mind spinning. She wasn't just cheating. She was staging a slow psychological demolition. A performance she'd curated perfectly. She was counting on me to cave, so she could walk away without a shred of guilt. playing the part of the abandoned wife while I quietly disappeared from her life like background static. But then she slipped. That night, when she came home, same time, same fake yawn, same vague excuse she made a mistake. She tossed her heels off by the door and went into the bedroom without checking her bag. She always checked her bag. Every time. But not tonight. Maybe she was distracted. Or maybe she just got careless. When she went to shower, I looked inside. There it was. A folded receipt from the hotel. Dated yesterday. 2 nights, ocean view, breakfast included. Signed under her name. But that wasn't the worst part. Tucked inside the receipt was something else, a note, scribbled on hotel stationery. It said, "I bet he still kissed you goodnight. Can't believe he hasn't caught on. This is getting fun." No name. No signature. Just the proof that it wasn't just cheating anymore. It was a game. A joke. A twisted contest to see how far I'd been before I broke. And here's the thing. I hadn't broken. Not yet. I sat down at the kitchen table with that note in front of me. I stared at it for what felt like hours. Then I picked up a pen, flipped the paper over, and wrote 2 words on the back in clean, steady handwriting. I know. I folded it, slid it back into her purse where the original had been, zipped it up, and left it exactly where she'd tossed it. The next day, when she went digging for her lip balm or whatever she pretended to use that bag for, she'd find it. And she'd know that I wasn't asleep anymore. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't accusing. I wasn't threatening. But I was awake now. And that's when everything started to change. She found the note 2 days later. I know because that morning, something changed in her face. Her eyes didn't move like they used to. She didn't scan the room. She didn't look through me with that smug boredom she'd worn for weeks. She just stood there in front of the door, clutching her bag like it had turned into a bomb. She didn't say anything. Not good morning, not drive me, not even a sigh. She left without a word, and for once, I didn't watch her go. I went back to the kitchen and made toast, not for both of us. Just for me. That day, I didn't hear from her. Not in the morning. Not in the evening. Not at all. Around 11 p.m., the front door opened softly. I didn't get up to meet her. She walked into the living room, saw me sitting with a book in my lap, and froze like she was seeing me for the first time in years. "Emery," she said, voice low, like she wasn't sure I'd answer. I didn't. I saw the note. Still nothing. She stepped further in, looking smaller than usual. Her coat hung heavy around her, like it belonged to someone else. I didn't think you'd ever do something like that." I closed the book gently and set it aside. "Do what?" "Say something without saying it," she replied, her throat tightening. "You always avoided conflict." I nodded. "Yeah, and you used to avoid cruelty." She flinched. Silence swallowed the room. Then, finally, she asked the question I'd been waiting weeks to hear. "Do you want me to leave?" And here's where the story shifts. Because I thought I'd say yes. I'd rehearsed it. I'd imagined what it would feel like to finally tell her to pack her things and walk out the door she'd been halfway through for months. But when she stood there, deflated, lost, no makeup, no armor, something else flickered in me. "I want you to leave," I said carefully, "if you don't see me anymore. If you're staying out of guilt or fear, or because it's easier than starting over, then yes, please go. But if you remember the version of us before all this, the part that didn't lie or push or mock, and you want to find it again, even if it takes time, then sit down." She stood frozen for several seconds. Then she took off her coat. And she sat. We didn't talk for hours. We didn't touch. We just existed beside each other in silence. It was awkward. Painful. Honest. Over the next few days, she started telling the truth, little pieces first, then more. She cried. She didn't blame me. For the first time in over a year, she looked directly at me and said, "I lost who we were. I wanted control. I chose the ugliest way to get it. I didn't forgive her overnight. But I listened. And she didn't run when I told her how small I'd felt. How invisible. How humiliated. She stayed. And when I asked her why, she said, "Because I finally saw what I did when you didn't yell. When you didn't fight. You were still standing. It wasn't a movie ending. No orchestras. No sudden spark. But it was a beginning. We went to couples therapy. We cut off the people who let the betrayal thrive. We deleted the shared calendar, started fresh. We got rid of the hotel receipts, the scarves, the lies. We planted lavender outside, the smell she used to love, and sat by the window each morning with coffee. She never let her phone hide under the table again. And me? I finally learned to speak before I broke. It's not a perfect story, but it's real. And sometimes, that's more than enough.